Some shocking new revelations about the hack of the Federal Personnel Agency that exposed the information of millions of Americans, raising the question, does Washington protect the information of criminals better than that of its own employees? Good morning to you. I'm John Scott. Welcome to Happening Now.
And that's a great question. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee, the director of the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, back on the hot seat at a House hearing investigating the massive data breach linked to China. As we learn that federal employees, including national security professionals, have their security clearance applications stored unencrypted on a public database. This while suspects arrested by police have their information transmitted on a secure network. And as lawmakers get an earful about this hack attack just down the street, there's a high-level meeting underway with Chinese diplomats as Secretary of State John Kerry and Treasury Secretary Jack Lew host a U.S.-China strategic and economic dialogue. All this happening in one day. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is following all the developments live from Washington and has more for us now. Catherine?
Well, Jenna, the hearing on cyber breaches began just an hour ago on Capitol Hill, and the witness to watch today is the head of Keypoint, a government contractor who processes security clearance applications. Fox News is told that hackers gained access to OPM, the federal government's Human Resources Department, using credentials stolen from Keypoint that was breached in December.
I appreciate that OPM continues to have confidence in your company, but I also want to know why Keypoint apparently did not have adequate logging capabilities to monitor the extent of data that was stolen. Why didn't you invest in these safeguards?
And late yesterday, the Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson gave a classified briefing on the OPM cyber breach to the full Senate, as 18 million current, former, and prospective government employees are possibly affected by the breach, and the number could spike as high as 30 million when relatives and references listed on those security clearance applications are factored in. This morning, the Republican chairman of the House Government Oversight Committee singled out this woman, the head of OPM, for criticism, and her statement before a Senate committee Tuesday that no single person is to blame for the catastrophic loss of data.
I disagree that nobody is to be held personally responsible. Personal accountability is paramount. People have roles, responsibilities. They are charged with their fiduciary responsibility of carrying out those. As the head of the agency, Ms. Archuleta is in fact statutorily responsible for the security of the OPM network and managing any risks.
Also, Fox News has learned through a federal law enforcement source that the U.S. government is unlikely to publicly identify the state actor behind the OPM breach. The decision not to publicly identify China really runs counter to the government's handling of the cyber attack on Sony Pictures last year that was very publicly blamed on North Korea. Jenna.
Interesting. So that's a little bit of a controversy about identifying or not identifying. Catherine, let me ask you something quickly. Sure. In our intro to you, we mentioned this, that we're learning that federal employees, including national security professionals, have had their security clearance exposed. Does that include members of our intelligence community, like spies, for example?
Well, this assessment is still ongoing, Jenna, but it's pretty well understood that the breach data did include the security clearance background checks for intelligence as well as military officials. And as you are well aware, the security clearance background checks also have very sensitive and personal information about family members and relatives. So for every file, you can be talking about 6, 7, or 8 people. This is why the number 18 versus 30. There is such a broad spread. And this information, if I could just make one final point, you know, the view of cyber intelligence sources is that this information is being aggregated by the Chinese and indexed so that they can build a profile of an individual to use that for blackmail or to act as an imposter, assume their identity, or to just further cyber breaches in the future as well.
Well, we certainly don't want anyone's identity or security information to be stolen, but it underscores the breach if some of these high-level officials have had their information exposed.
And just one final idea to throw out there for you, if I could. Look, this nexus to China is extremely important. And the question as we head towards the end of the month is whether the U.S. government will not take any public action against China or make public statements because they really need the Chinese on board to get this deal with Iran. That's really kind of the elephant in the room here.
Well, we'll see. I said that's coming to a head. June 30th is the deadline for that. And then, of course, there's always the possibility of extensions as well.
Correct.
Catherine, interesting story, a big one for us today. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions.